All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a good breakout session. And what I would like for you to do now is to use the chat function and answer the question. And just to remind you, we want you to give an example of where a company or an organization that you were part of or you read about or heard about, where they were faced with complexity and either one, found ways to reduce or mitigate that, or two, found ways to embrace it. And the embracing ones are the ones I really want to get those examples because they're harder to find, to be honest. And so that's what we're looking for. While you're typing those in, let me just answer some questions that have come in. I'm going to not pronounce this name correctly. Parameshwarwan Iyer asks if we can expect any coverage of blockchain or Internet of Things, IoT, in future courses. And the answer to that is yes. We cover those in SC3x. We keep a lesson open there to always talk about new technologies. And blockchain is certainly moving up the channel. IoT is an interesting one too, the Internet of Things, the whole idea where you connect, because what we're seeing, that actually really adds to the complexity. Because if you look at that, the drivers that we talked about, and so you look at all the devices that can be connected on the Internet of Things, the sheer number of devices is going to make the complexity go through the roof. The variety of things as well. And the other thing, the aspect of it, the data is really freeform. When companies communicate with each other, and we'll talk about this in SC3x, there are standards usually for communications, for placing an order, for moving a shipment. There's EDI or some kind of transaction sets that really dictate exactly what the information is being exchanged in a very structured way. IoT is typically very freeform and unstructured. So anytime you have unstructured data, that makes it even more complicated. So we'll talk more about Internet of Things, blockchain, autonomous vehicles, drones, all that kind of cool stuff in SC3x. Not so much in this course. And then,
it's still cool.
I'm sorry?
I said, but it's still cool.
It's still cool. And a tool, I don't have a last name, also commented that thinking that fireworks should be banned. My dogs would certainly vote for that. They are not big 4th of July fans at all. And then we had another question from Salil Kumar about when we talk about emissions in logistics and how that's handled. And I'll let you talk about that, Alexis.
Yeah, so thinking about emissions with logistics, we'll be in week 10 talking about regulation and corporate social responsibility and all the factors that go along with that. So we'll be talking about a couple of forces that are being impacted on the supply chain that affect supply chain dynamics, and that includes both regulations such as different regulatory bodies in different parts of the world that control emissions. For example, the Air Resources Board in different states in the United States. There's a similar type body in Europe and especially in the UK that actually controls the amount of emissions that can be released and in what quantity, as well as sort of the other side of that, which could be the sort of industry and societal pressure to actually make your logistics more environmentally friendly, more optimized to reduce the environmental impact. So we'll look at these different factors on why and how logistics companies are changing their practices, whether that be actually upgrading the trucks or optimizing their routes or having different practices with the drivers. You know, one of the great examples we've had, or we jokingly tell, is UPS has a policy, no left turns in the United States. When you go to turn left, you're actually idling because you can't actually go on a red light, but in some places you can actually turn on a red light, so it reduces the amount of idling. So they like to claim that's an environmental impact, because it reduces the idling as well as the emissions, but actually it's also an efficiency. So we'll be discussing some of that in week 10. So certainly we'll also possibly have some links that you can kind of look a little deeper into emissions control for logistics. So that will be discussed then. I had one other comment just from Robin, basically saying that reuse of materials in products is not new. I totally agree with that. It's been done for years and largely for cost and control measures, so not necessarily at all environmentally. Xerox has been doing it with their copy machine for years. Airplanes, the auto industry, they're actually famous reusers. They're some of the most efficient reusers of remanufactured materials, actually, because of the cost of the materials. So this is, we were actually talking in our little breakout about actually, milk jugs for years ago. It was actually more cost efficient at one point in time to recollect those and you reuse them again, as opposed to actually making new glass bottles. And so now that's not necessarily the case, but we're seeing a shift in some of the recollection processes. So that was some of the questions we had. And I think we have a few more comments. Chris, do you want to look at?
I'll take one and then you can take the next one. So let me, one that came out. What's funny is everyone thinks, a lot of people think Amazon is the only one doing anything innovative. It's just funny how these examples come out. But James N1117 mentioned in their group that Amazon, they're able to do it in part through using warehouses in a lean manner where they handle both high velocity as well as drop shipping from vendors. So the idea there, and actually they're not alone in this, but it's kind of an innovation. So instead of having a specialized DC that can only handle, it's optimized for one type of use, they're able to handle multiple things. So they can use it as a fulfillment center as well as drop shipping. And that being able to have that flexibility to handle a wide variety is something that not every company can do. And so that by doing that, they're kind of embracing the different size of shipments and different capabilities within one facility. So that's a good example. Alexis, do you want to pick one?
Yeah. So I'll leave Jason for you, but I'll take Trellis Delta. So thinking about embracing complexity, it's a great example. She mentioned, or they mentioned 23andMe. So that's actually the DNA swab that you can put in your mouth or whatever kind of approach. And then they send it back, and your whole kind of family tree is fleshed out and exactly where you're from. And so I think that this isn't a case where it's been complexity has been embraced, as they said, where as opposed to sort of a standard product, each one is unique. And this is actually, sort of a complex system of taking it back and actually processing those and identifying those kind of unique information for that person. So that was an interesting case of actually embracing the complexity, because each actual report is going to be unique.
Yeah, so here's one from Parameshwan, and I mentioned one thing about Amazon again, but a variety of payment methods. And this is something that Jim and Jared talked about, where you have different payment methods, whether it's cash on delivery or courier options, and you can handle different things. If you're a buyer, like a retailer, and you can handle different payment terms in your system, you can offer that to different vendors. You might be able to offer more breadth, as opposed to if you only have one type. So this actually gets into segmentation. And so we talk about that because that's one approach to combat complexity, is you segment things. And you see where there's a lot of variety, you segment that into one group and you handle it separately. That's why when SC3x, we stress this a lot, that you don't have one supply chain, you have multiple supply chains. And we did the simple segmentation, ABC, right? So you have your fast movers, your very few large movers, and your very many small movers. Those are your C items, and the Bs are ones in between. It's the same concept. Another one they give is the In-N-Out burgers, which I think what's that mean, where they have very simple ingredients. But the interesting thing about an In-N-Out burger, have you ever been to an In-N-Out burger, Arthur? Alexis, you have In-N-Out by you, right?
Oh yeah, it's big and it's huge in California.
Yeah, they don't have them on the East Coast. But the thing is, they have certain ones, but then there's like a secret menu. There's the off the menu orders, right? Where you order something and they know what it is, like a jungle burger or whatever. It's not listed, but it means something. So yeah, that introduces its whole level of complexity, where you have SKUs, but then you have partial SKUs. So restaurants are always a little tricky, because as opposed to a strict bill of materials, like we talked about in SC3x, where you have a strict BOM and strict ingredients to make something, in restaurants you make them a little bit different, and that raises a whole bunch of complexity on ordering, because the same end item that's sold, say a burrito, might have very different bills of material because of the way that preparer wants it, or some different style difference. And so it raises a lot of issues with inventory ordering. Alexis, you want to pick one? We got time for two more. You pick one, then I'll pick one.
All right. Well, I'll look at Jason. So he brought up the fact that the growth of artificial intelligence, AI. So this is sort of interesting because we've sort of by the fact that supply chains have been so complex and trying to grapple with like hundreds of thousands of suppliers, millions of customers. How do we even start to tackle some of the issues embedded in this? And some would say, the correct approach would be to simplify, reduce your supplier base, reduce your products. That might be one way to reduce complexity. Others would be to start to think about how we can use artificial intelligence to actually deal with the complexity. So it's something that Chris was alluding to in SC3x we'll be talking about. I know that he mentioned IBM's Watson. I know that they've been looking also into blockchain, into how to actually deal with the complexity and transparency and traceability of our products so that we can actually have a shared database of information without having any ownership by any single company, so that you can actually look and see what is happening upstream, as well as the fact that artificial intelligence can start learning and machine learning to actually kind of predict when there might be issues or problems. I don't know if you have something else to add to that one, Chris.
No, I think you covered that pretty well. The last one I want to do is from Prajith Dandangadi, Prajith anyway, and he or she wrote, an example of embracing complexity is a luxury fashion dress and accessories brand company. And typically the company conducts major fashion shows worldwide. The products that are showcased in the fashion show were available to be ordered after a few weeks. They changed this. They did major changes in their production, storage, distribution, ordering, and IT systems to ensure that on the same day of the fashion show, people who watch the show can order the items that they liked immediately. And products could be delivered in a few days' time. And there's a lot of complexity in that. And I think this is Zara, right? This sounds like Zara. And so Zara's really upset the fashion industry because, it used to be a trickle down. You do something in, where's the big fashion shows? I'm not the guy to ask.
Paris and New York.
Paris, New York, and isn't there something in Italy? What are they called? In Milan or something?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And so they show something, and then it trickles down, and eventually, within like a couple of years, you see it at the Walmart, right? And so it starts getting changed. And so what Zara did is they went for fast fashion, is what they call it. And so it's lower price, and instead of having it produced at a low-cost production in the Pacific Rim, typically China's where most apparel is manufactured. They use small shops throughout Southern Europe, throughout Spain predominantly, where they can get the design immediately, send it down, and have things sent up almost same day. And there's a lot of cases there, but they have a very fast cycle time. The other interesting thing about Zara, just to give you a different taste of it, is that they actually don't care if they stock out. They kind of go off the idea of being scarce is actually valuable. So instead of making sure you never run out, so in the supply chains, we always think of it that way. You want your inventory level to never run out or be 95% cycle service level, all these statistics. Zara said, you know what? If you come into my store and you see a dress or something that you like, you better buy it, because next time you come, it might not be here. And so it preys on a very different mentality. So it's very interesting, a different approach. And again, that adds more complexity. Great examples here. Any ones that you want to end with? We've got about a minute left, Alexis. I'll let you wrap it up, and you want to talk about one more example, or just wrap up the Hangout. It's a great Hangout event. Thanks.
Yeah, this is great. So there are a couple examples that some Moneste and Jason, actually, no, not Jason, another, now I can't remember who actually brought it up, but that they're actually sort of replacement products is a extreme problem. So with the different major products where a singular place or product needs to actually be replaced. This actually builds in a lot of complexity, but if you can have sort of a provider, in between provider that actually have those parts, as opposed to actually having to go back to the original manufacturer, is actually one kind of way to mitigate some of those complexity. So it's certainly, in major, whether it be a cell tower or a windmill or these major kind of operations that have many replacement parts and actually might go, outside warranty or might actually actually expire. There's different kind of ways to address that, whether there's sort of, algorithms to assess whether that is going to be going out and actually providing the sort of middlemen with the opportunity to replace those products, or being able to actually, kind of identify that. So certainly a lot of complexity there and different ways to kind of mitigate that complexity. So those are great examples. So I just want to thank you for joining us today. We really enjoyed it, and we're so glad you guys could come and hang out with us. If you want to do it next time, we're going to have a couple more. Please become a verified student, because next time we will have to close it just for verified students. So, check out my past emails, and there'll be a link in there. It's all over the website, but we'll definitely, look forward, whether you're audit or verified, we're happy to have you in the course, and hope that you enjoy supply chain dynamics, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.